Now, over the past 2 days, we've explored the many challenges facing supply chains in an increasingly uncertain and disrupted world, as well as the tools, partnerships, and strategies being developed to address them. In our final session of the conference, we're going to hear from security leaders at some of the world's largest logistics service providers and how they are protecting global operations, assets, facilities, and people across complex and constantly changing environments. This is an opportunity to hear how they anticipate risk, respond to emerging threats, build resilience, and what they see as the key challenges and priorities for the future. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Adrian Whelan, SVP, Head of Global Security at DHL Express. Do come on up. Andreas, Global Head of Security and Governmental Affairs at Kuehne+Nagel. James Connell, Head of Supply Chain Loss Prevention, Global Safety and Resilience at Maersk. And Patrick Douglas, VP, Security, Health and Safety at Expeditors. Thank you all so much for being with us. Let me start, Adrian, with you. Adrian, DHL Express now has, as I understand, 520 TAPA FSR certified facilities globally. This is quite an achievement. So how do you feel that such a substantial investment supports your business?
That's loud. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sam, for the question. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for sticking around for this session. As you say, we're very proud, Sam. We have 520 TAPA certified sites around the world in all of the regions. My good friends from APAC, Tony and Alvin, are down here. We started our TAPA journey in APAC, in Penang Gateway, many, many years ago. That was our first of 520. So how does it help? It helps in terms of we are providing, for many of you in the room, you're our valued customers. You want a safe, secure, and resilient supply chain. And we believe that by investing in the FSRs and providing you with a robust security environment for your valuable shipments as they go through our network, that first of all, you have the trust in us that we're investing in a secure supply chain. We're providing our 100,000 employees globally with a safe place to work. A safe place to work is a great place to work as we see it. We work, very, very closely with our regulators. We have challenges with certain commodities such as illegal drugs. So whilst we're trying to prevent stuff from being stolen, stuff being taken out, we're also trying to prevent bad stuff from going in, whether it's on the terrorism front, whether it's with illegal drugs. So we're trying to provide both a secure supply chain as well as one with integrity. And we believe that mainly for you, our customers, that you want that secure supply chain. You're paying very good money when you send shipments with us. And you both demand, expect, and we're going to give you, we believe, a very secure supply chain. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, thank you, Adrian. James, let me come to you. No company addresses all security and resilience risk with in-house solutions. In what ways can transporters and logistics providers leverage vendor relationships to improve results and deliver consistency?
Thank you, Sam, for the question. So I think goes back to, what Tony said yesterday, and everything starts with a good risk assessment. And what is a BCP or a BIA but a form of a risk assessment, right? So I think when we start with the BIA, we have to look at our classic 4 categories of people, assets, technology, and vendors. And unfortunately, the people, assets, and technology also fall under the vendors category sometime as well. So we see a lot of our services, a lot of our physical assets may not belong to us, maybe be provided by others. So I actually really respected, I think it was Ricardo from Axis when I was talking to him earlier, and we were talking about how we have some key vendors that we've selected for his technology, but we don't put all our baskets in any of them, and he said you shouldn't. And I think that was really responsible of him as a vendor. I think any of us, even Maersk, we would love to say to any of our customers, exclusively use us, but that wouldn't be very resilient of you either as well, because I think there's always situations where even if we don't want them to happen, they do. I think a good example from us is last year with the power outage in Spain. There was a 2-day power outage in Spain. We have diversified in our vendor selection out there. We did a supplier segmentation exercise, and we saw that even multiple of the suppliers we had selected for man guarding in Spain, I mean, public transit was down, everything. We just couldn't get to our high-value warehouses to make sure that those goods were protected. We did find a solution, but I think it's a growth journey together. So finding the big vendors, working with them to build, but also when you find the small vendors that want to grow and want to do good, building with them, you form a loyalty as well as they become more attuned to your business model. And then I think the last thing I'll say with the vendor piece and building that resilience and security is the lessons learned can't be just in-house. So when the lessons learned come from a crisis, come from a single incident, how do you tie in your vendors for those 4 key categories across people, assets, vendors, and technology to be part of the lessons learned so they can build their resiliency as well as you building yours?
Thanks, James. Patrick, let me come to you now. What would you say is the supply security chain risk that's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I think there's a multiple number of events that keep me up at night, but I go to terrorism and drugs. And I think that's a place where I go with TAPA. The elimination or the reduction of risk in the supply chain is critical. It's those organized crimes, stealing cargo, converting that cargo into cash, and using our supply chains, those who have invested in security, to bring narcotics and terrorism into countries. And I will say I'm from the US, so that drives a lot of what I've been thinking about lately. When I think about that risk tolerance and risk perspective, I've been very focused on what's going on in and around the world. I'm also realizing that I'm at the time that I normally talk to Europeans, so I'm also grateful for the time slot and appreciate those of you who have stayed late to talk to me in the evenings over the years as well, so thank you very much.
Andreas, let me come to you. What would you say is your definition of organizational resilience, and how do you see the changing risk landscape?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam, and thanks for having me today. So as far as the definition of resilience is concerned, I would like to refer to the ISO norm 22316, which says this is an organizational resilience, is an organization's ability to absorb and to adapt to a changing environment. So, of course, over the years, the catalog of risks which need to be taken into account has drastically increased. So originally, you would take into consideration natural disasters and environmental problems, which disrupt or minimize the ability to have access to personnel, to IT and communication means, to power supply, and critical infrastructure like ports, roads. However, in addition, you also have to bear in mind man-made disruptions, like, for example, strikes, social unrest. But of course, from 2019, we have also learned that pandemics might have a major kind of impact on your operations because there were border closures, which were unprecedented, impacting that. And lastly, of course, we have acts of war, like, for example, closure of Strait of Hormuz, which increased, led to rocket high, kind of sky high fuel rates. And of course, there is the subject of hybrid warfare, which also was striking recently. You know that there were kind of incendiary devices introduced into the air supply chain, which finally led to imposure of additional stringent measures by governmental bodies, which also disrupted supply chains globally. So, and lastly, you have crime, of course, which is cybercrime. You can also buy as a service. And even you have hybrid warfare, which is also the latest kind of trick, where, for example, from Belarus, you have these kind of balloons leading to airport closures and airspace closures around the Baltic countries and others.
That's a long list, Andreas. James, would you like to add anything to that list?
I think he hit on just one key point there that I'd like to add to is that so often I think our operators have a positive mindset and we want to encourage that, but our BCPs I think have classically, especially before COVID, have been, hey, what do we do in 2 weeks? What do we do if this happens for 30 days? But now we need to be building BCPs and resilience packages that are 6 months, a year. Like COVID has shown us, the Strait of Hormuz is showing us now, that potentially your 30-day plan for the sun rising in a month isn't going to happen. So we have to be realistic with our C-suite executives and also make sure that we have BCPs that look at the immediate, the long-term, and potentially even the very long-term.
Thank you, James. Let me stay with you and ask you another question. You know, the world is dynamic and changing, and companies are continually having to work. How can leaders really drive these conversations on risk appetite?
So I think risk appetite is a very interesting thing, especially now, right? So as much as we are always going to, you know, we always say we protect safety, operations, brand, something along those lines, and safety will always be number one, but we can't pretend that we don't exist in a zero risk environment ever. So I think companies with their top leadership principles or their top policies say that we will never X, we will never Y, we will never Z, and I think those are important, but when it comes to risk appetite, we can't be stagnant. I think we have to continue to drive those conversations with those C-suite executives to say, this is where we were. We're not saying that we want to put people at risk, but this is where the risk is taking us, and if we want to keep operating in this method or in these locations, we have to be able to drive those conversations on risk appetite. And I think Tony said it very well yesterday as well, is we have to be the steer in those conversations. We're talking about very high level executives that are very smart, but maybe don't have our mindset and they're also scared. So how can we, instead of just saying, here's the problem, here's a simple set of solutions, you may take all of them, you may take none of them, but I think we cannot be stagnant with risk appetite. We have to be understanding that it's a dynamic situation, just like the supply chain we operate in. So speak their language, speak direct impacts, don't just read intelligence reports. It doesn't get us anywhere. Connect it to the business, connect it to operations. I often say to my people and this company and many before that we have the unfortunate job of knowing everyone else's job. And I think that's what helps us drive those conversations with those leaders.
Patrick, did you want to follow on that?
Yeah, just a couple of little things I would mention to follow up on James's comments. It definitely is an opportunity to engage with customers. And that's the part I really love, is engaging with customers to talk about their risk perspectives. I am not good at figuring out what the risk is of that $1 million AI server, let alone the $5 million AI server that is being moved. And so working closely with customers and service providers from those two perspectives to understand how do we mitigate against those risks and who are those people who are targeting your products. That's where I've tried to spend a lot of time lately, is focusing on who wants what you have. You know, and it's very different for various customers, retail customers versus a high-tech sector, and really focusing on understanding where you think that attack vector is coming from helps all of us on this panel figure out how to engage and put solutions forward for you.
Thank you, Patrick. Adrian, let me come back to you. We know that quantifying the financial and operational impact of potential risk or ongoing crises is difficult. What methods can security and resilience leaders use to quantify risk, potential impact, and cost avoidance of mitigating measures?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Sam. So if you take the current situation in the Middle East, the most conservative, risk-averse approach is for the likes of ourselves. We're in all of the Middle East countries. We just say we're going to stop doing business and we're going to send thousands of people back to their home countries. That's an extreme example, right? So our job, we're paid to manage risk. We're paid to manage risk because you, our customers, you rely on us to get your shipments from A to B at all times, whether it's a normal time, quote unquote, or whether it's during a particularly challenging time. So the way we approach it is staff safety is non-negotiable. So then the sort of starting point from there is, how do we continue to move your shipments, whether it's into Dubai, into Saudi, into Bahrain. Our regional hub is in Bahrain. So we're not short of challenges in that part of the world at the moment. But we face challenges, and we have faced challenges since we were formed back in 1969, whether it's in Africa, in Asia, the Middle East. We're very used to it. We have a robust supply chain. We've got a very robust and experienced team of leaders who, when they get up and get out of bed in the morning, their first job is to keep their people safe. but then is, excuse me, how do we continue to operate? So in answer to your question, the financial cost to us would be stopping business, and then obviously you've got a huge impact, versus continue safely and continue to provide hopefully a very good service for our customers. I can't give you a number, obviously, but you can imagine with the volume and the number of shipments we're dealing with, for us to sort of down tools, a very significant impact, versus we continue to operate well, and we show customers that we're good. Not only are they going to stick with us, but hopefully they'll give us more business. So we can, I guess, we can take the challenge, turn it into an opportunity, and we can use the infrastructure with the TAPA certified facilities, the safety training for our people to support and promote the business.
Thanks, Adrian. Patrick, I'll come to you, and then I'll come back to you, Andreas. Patrick, do you have any recommendations on where smaller companies should be making security investments?
I think, I love the question. As a non-asset-based provider, I rely on our service providers to deliver our customers' cargo around the world. And so first and foremost, we focus on the safety, using the Middle East as the example, really making sure that our people are not putting themselves in danger, and making sure our service providers are not putting themselves in danger. There are things that I think about investments in that space is really focused on using technology, the people and the processes to enable I love the HI comment somebody had earlier, the human intelligence to be more successful. Helping people protect themselves. When people are protecting themselves and they feel safe, they're able to provide better service. So starting in those simple things, focusing on the gift cards. I love that idea as well. That was fantastic from earlier. Providing families protections, helping them stay comfortable. I think those are the things that I encourage our service providers to invest in so that their people can perform at the best. When we're awake at the end of the day and challenged with those stressors, we respond better when we feel safe and comfortable. And so focusing on that for our service providers.
And what would you say companies on a budget can do to build resilience into their operations to deal with these everyday security risks?
When I hear the word business continuity and testing, I always go to this big 1 day, 2 day event, the Red Team event, which stressed the whole company where cars were stolen. I think about that, and I think about smaller providers. I think about Expeditors. I'm not sure that I would win friends by doing that. So pick things so that are small and tangible. Pick a process. We've spent a lot of time talking about fraud. Fraud is a lot about authentication. Are you who you say you are? So use those types of red team strategies to test out those pieces and components as opposed to trying to attack your entire company on one day. And I think building those small components allows you to get through your supply chain and add value.
Thanks, Patrick. Andreas, over the course of this conference, we've talked a lot about organized crime. What are the types of modus operandi that you're seeing, and what are the ones that really concern you most at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. So referring to databases, intelligence databases, but also internal security incident reports, we can clearly state that the mostly or most commonly used modus operandi by far is theft of loads from vehicle. This, of course,
Andreas, just lift your microphone a bit closer.
This, of course, particularly affects cargoes sitting in unsecure laybys during overnight rests, which are also poorly secured. So then, of course, you have in other kind of geographies incidents which are predominantly using armed hijacking. This is primarily the case in South and Central America, in Mexico, India, and South Africa, logically. But what's looming right now is the strategic targeted theft, also known as fictitious pickup theft. So whereas the other kind of modus operandi create a kind of loss per incident in the range between 60 and 80,000, here we talk about 600,000 as a minimum, because they know in particular what kind of cargo they are going after, and they steal predominantly nice kind of cargo, full truck loads, full container loads, and this is really becoming a threat. And we also have to bear in mind that organized crime is very smart. Yeah, so they use spoofing of telephone numbers, they forge email addresses, they forge documentation like freight documents. They are also capable to forge licenses to impersonate that they're a legitimate carrier. And we also have reportedly cases where they even submitted to the Department of Transport in the US a change request on the address. So that means they made it legal finally. Yeah? So, and when you compare the address in the database, you say, okay, no, it's a legitimate carrier. Everything is fully matching, and that's a problem. And therefore, we really have to work on precautions to mitigate the exposure. And here we have to also closely collaborate with law enforcement and hope that they are also willing to share information with us, and we can also mirror information back to them.
I can see a lot of agreement from the panel on this one. Does anybody else want to add anything on MOs? Patrick?
One thing I would add, I tend to be a little US heavy, so I apologize for that. But in terms of one of the things that just drives me insane is currently in the US is the rail issues. And I imagine anybody who ships from Asia across the West Coast to central U.S. has experienced seal anomalies and an alarming rate in pilferage. And I would say that's an area where we've really been focused with our customers, collaborating with law enforcement, utilizing technology for tracking things like cargo signal to alert the rail police, to build heat maps of where we see seal anomalies occurring. Using those strategies to, again, build data to allow resources to be allocated to the correct locations. It's not hard, it's California, and so we continue to focus on working with law enforcement in California. The other piece I'd share is just the theft targets that happen in Europe. They're the same attacks that are happening in the US. They're the same attacks that we're gonna see around the rest of the world. The cybersecurity team is in Europe. It's not in the US, despite what people believe. And definitely that dark marketplace is used to sell that information to the various components and operating groups around the world. So I just was excited to hear Opal as well. I thought that was fantastic. I do want the TV rights for the US, so if you could talk to me afterwards, I'd appreciate that. So thank you.
Adrian, can we elaborate a little bit on something you've touched on a bit? In terms of current world events and conflicts with the present challenges in the Middle East, how has DHL Express really managed to provide ongoing service to its clients and maintain the safety of your employees?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Obviously, it's a very topical question. So, as I said earlier, so we're in 220 current countries and territories around the world. So within that, there are some crazy countries without naming them, so I'm not going to offend anyone. And we've been dealing with the more challenging countries. For those of us who've been around a little while, we quite enjoy dealing with the challenging countries. We employ people in those countries who like living in these crazy countries and who are very resilient people. And I was in Dubai 2 weeks ago, and in one service center, Maidan service center, our service center managers are Sri Lankan. The majority of our couriers are from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. So all of our couriers from that's our main operating base in the UAE. Every single one of them is a foreigner. So when people talk about, when things get tough, you need to sort of send people away and all this nonsense, it just isn't as simple as that. When you're operating in a lot of these countries, a lot of your workforce are not from that particular country. So they need to work. They're there for a reason. They're there to earn money, to send back to their families. They want to work. They don't want to go home. If they go home, they're not getting paid, et cetera, et cetera. Our job is to make sure that when they're working, they're in a safe environment. In the UAE, for example, we do that. In Bahrain, we do it. In Kuwait, in Saudi, whatever. So we spend a lot of time and money, and rightly so, to keep our people safe. The processes, we obviously have to adapt. So to move a shipment from A to B in the express world, primarily it goes on an aircraft. With the current restrictions with aircraft movement in the Middle East, we have to adapt and be agile. Instead of flying it, we're putting it on trucks. So instead of flying a shipment from UAE into Saudi, we'll put on a truck. And we have the capability, we have the qualified and experienced people, we have the infrastructure, whether it's a plane or it's a vehicle. The other really important element, ladies and gentlemen, is working with your regulators, because it's all well and good having the hardware and having the people, but if the regulator does not like you, doesn't trust you, doesn't allow you to do this stuff, then you hit quite literally and metaphorically a roadblock. So we spend a lot of time working with our regulators, with the local authorities. We like to think we've got a very trusted relationship. So when we say plan A is not working, can we move to plan B? We have to develop a set of guidelines, a set of rules and whatever, and then we hope to get the approval from them as quickly as possible. So the regulatory piece, working with your local authorities, for us is critically important, and that's one that tends to get overlooked in these types of scenario.
Thank you. Patrick, did you want to add?
I'm sorry, I just add one thing. It was mentioned earlier with all the disruptions. For every disruption, particularly in the Middle East right now, there is an opportunistic group operating. And particularly with the shift from air freight through the Middle East to ground transportation to avoid the air freight issues, we're obviously seeing an uptick in theft. And that's a stressor. There are always bad people trying to take advantage of these bad situations. So I heard that asked the other day and have just seen the subtle rise in a country where we see almost no crime in Saudi Arabia. So I would just encourage people to be diligent in that space. I think that kind of connects to James' comment on the resiliency needing to last months. That's an important thing to keep in mind.
Thank you. James, security and resilience are no longer a preference of customers, but a requirement. How are supply chain security and resilience leaders building their function into the value proposition of their offering to customers?
Yeah, thank you. I think for this one, I'll break it down really quickly into kind of like 3 key categories, right? So we have a fantastic commercial team at Maersk, and they have quite a popular little saying for support functions like us, which at the end of the day, we do have to remember we're a support function. And that's what to know, what to show, what to say. So what do they need to know? Which I think is it's about us training them, right? So they don't know our function, they know how to sell the capability to move cargo. So us being able to teach them, so what do they need to know about our function, how to get in touch with us, what our org chart looks like, what to show, do you have customer-ready packets for your capability towards the customers, and then what to say is what are they allowed to say before they need to call you into the room? And I think that's one of the other points I want to say of the 3 is make sure you're in the right room. We're seeing not only that our customers want us on the RFI conversations, especially with certain verticals, technology, high-value fashion, government contracts, things like that. So they need to know when to pull us into the room. So I think being in not just that room, but if you're, we operate at an area and regional model, so if your area commercial team is meeting for their monthly upcoming opportunities, be in the room. Doesn't mean you're gonna every time be part of the conversation, but when they're bringing up something unique that may need an extra security piece, I think it's extremely important that we're in that room, even if we don't always have something to say in that room. And then I think we can never discount the third thing, which is built-in mechanisms for the systems that we have internally, right? So I think we have a great one at Maersk that during the contracting process, there is a requirement for certain HSE or security and business continuity professionals to review the contracts as needed. And then it's a back and forth with the customer, right? So I think you said it as well, it's so important to work with the customers. And I think when we're able to be in those rooms, I know some of our customers are here. I won't say which customers I'm referring to, but there's been situations where we've had to change their model and potentially charge a little bit more, but show the incident history and say, hey, you can choose this methodology, but the risk will outweigh it if you pay a little bit more. And then, unfortunately, there may be the situation where our commercial teams say no, or that there is a no in that situation. And I think that's when you can show that you've actually really built that relationship with your commercial team because they trust you and your customers trust you as well. So I think for me, it's, again, education, the built-in mechanisms, and make sure that we continue to maintain our seats at the right tables.
Andreas, do you want to add something to that
Yes,
follow-up?
right. So, you know, that is the downside of these kind of functional units like we are, as you rightly mentioned. So in order to deliver value to the organization, we're working closely with the customers and also with the business units in order to also deliver unparalleled kind of security solutions to meet the demand and to protect products. So therefore, we also have our own kind of internal R&D team, which is working on these kind of solutions to mitigate risk exposure. And this is actually how we try to sell value.
Thank you, Andreas. Adrian, let me come back to you. How important is resilience, and is it a buzzword or hype, or is it really reality in your opinion?
Yeah, it's very much a reality, Sam, as I say, and I think just following on from what my colleague said there, the way we approach resilience is you have to use your resilient model as a business enabler. I mean, at the end of the day, you're in business to make money. In our business, we're there to move shipments from A to B. The resilience allows you, us in the security function, you have to be a business enabler. You can't be a business blocker. Back in the day, security was putting up walls and fences and all of that, all the old-fashioned stuff. Now you're an integral part of the business. We've moved on. Customers now, one of their key factors in when they're deciding which company to use, they want a secure supply chain. They want to pick a company that no matter what's going on, whether it's an issue in the Middle East, whether it's something in Africa, whether it's in Asia, they have to have the confidence that when they sign up with you in DHL, whether it's DGF, supply chain or Express, that you are going to continue to operate. So the way we view it and the way senior management views it and tells us is, Adrian, I'm going to invest 250 million euros in 520 TAPA certified sites. I want a return on that investment. And the return on the investment, as we see it, is not only do we continue to operate, we like to think that we're actually going to grow the business. People are going to see that we're continuing to operate. So it's very much, for me, about the business enablement, supporting the business, growing the business, and obviously at the end of that, there are shareholders who are saying, we've spent a lot of money in our case on security. What are we getting back from it?
Thank you. James, do you want to follow on that?
I just want to add to an incredibly good point he made there. So I think up until today, in most conversations, we've been talking about data, whether it's AI or just any data. How do we leverage data to reduce risk? How do we leverage data to make better business decisions when it comes to protecting our people, assets, brand, et cetera? But data exists for two key other reasons as well. It's also to manage performance, which I don't think we need to go into that, but it's also to measure our value to the company. So I think whether it's measuring cost avoidance, whether it's measuring the number of commercial interactions we've had and the value of those commercial interactions, to say that, hey, we're not the reason that we sold a contract, it's because we can move goods. But if we can say that we were part of this conversation for this reason, we did this many contract reviews. So I think measuring the output of the security function is extremely important for the ability to grow and expand, not just for the sake of growing, but to continue to expand our value proposition and drive overall growth in our total company.
As we come to the last few questions, let's turn to talk a little bit about technology. Patrick, are there any recent changes to supply chain technology or to supply that will impact supply chain security?
Timing-wise, we were after the panel. I found their suggestions and comments amazing. Just the speed to which technology is changing seems to get faster and faster. I'm going to age myself a bit, but thinking about the internet and going to cloud servers, and now we're into the AI revolution, and next will be robotics. So trying to blend all of those technologies together into a cohesive tool set that supports operations and execution is key. And that's an area where we've been focused over the last several years, is integrating those technologies into our teams to make them successful. One of the comments I heard too was using AI for good. I challenge ourselves to use AI for good but bad, and thinking about how the criminals are going to ask AI to do those things. Asking, where are the distributor's warehouse? so that I can get on the internet board and identify where that cargo's delivering to. Thinking about manufacturing sites, asking AI to tell me where is the supply chain for memory coming from, and how does it flow across the globe, right? And thinking about those types of questions and helping ourselves match up better to what the criminals are using AI for. And I think that's a huge one. And the other piece I would say is just the Internet of Things is really starting to mature, and the ability to take those dots on a map and do intelligent things in terms of resilience, being able to adjust flows real time is fascinating and exciting for me. I always think about the earthquake in Seattle, and my business continuity focuses on addressing those risks. But it's those minor events that may impact a customer that's not in the place where I am. And so making sure that our technology is also enabling us to create visibility for customers to more quickly adapt. I've been yelled at several times in my career for not alerting somebody to a theft event. And so my focus is really making sure that any of those kind of minor disruptions that might impact a customer's supply chain, we put to the forefront of our communication strategies with our operational teams.
Adrian, let me come to you on that same point about supply chain technology that'll impact supply chain security.
Yep. Two, I want to bring it down to a practical working level. I'm not going to talk about AI. There are many far more educated people who can talk about that. So within DHL Express, two practical technological advancements for us. We call it Piece ID. So when we scan a shipment with us has about 17 checkpoints from the point of pickup to the point of delivery. When we scan a shipment within a facility, we're now able to automatically link the scanner with the CCTV. Back in the day, you'd have to go back at a certain time. There was a certain shipment with a waybill. Now we're automatically linking the scanning of the shipment with the CCTV. So now if we're looking for a shipment in a facility, we just key in the waybill number and it will pull up all of the images of that particular shipment. That's one. And the other one, which many of you won't be familiar with, you will when you're traveling through airports and you're using the CT technology, computer tomography, X-rays. We're using CT technology for scanning, X-raying as it was called, scanning our shipments. They're about €1 million each. I think we've got about 55 deployed globally. Speed is obviously far greater than a traditional X-ray, but more importantly, getting a 3D image of the shipment as it goes through. We're looking for IEDs, DGs, and it's giving our operators an incredibly reliable and accurate image of the shipment. So those are two practical examples of where we in DHL Express are using technology.
Thank you so much, Adrian. James, let me come to you on AI. If AI is the future, where do security and resilience leaders create safety barriers for how AI is to be used to automate, educate, and simplify security and resilience efforts? And then I'm just going to see if anybody else might want to talk about opportunities and threats that they feel from AI afterwards.
Of course, thank you. Probably not qualified to speak on this with a lot of intelligence, but I'm going to give my opinion. And I'm also going to give a quick shout out to, I'm sure all of us will speak to the same, but our AI policy that we wrote was written by our global head of intelligence. I also have a lot of what I've heard said today is because we have a global head of CM and BC. So I think our peers integrating that's to what you asked about the organizational resilience. We are a small part of everything. So I think just jumping back quickly to our global head of intelligence, he initially kicked this off when we started talking about AI is how do we quickly write a policy to, and I think Tony said it yesterday, was we don't pass on risk, or maybe it was Andreas with Volkswagen, but we don't pass on risk to AI platforms, right? When we're doing risk assessments, whether they're site, whether they're route risk assessments, however we use AI to determine risk, it is checked over by again, I like the word HI as well, human intelligence is always involved. So I think there is clear guidelines we have to paint around that about how we assess risk and how we present those risks to the business. There should always be a verification step. And I know this, we've all heard this, but trash in, trash out, right? I think when it comes to data, first we have to decide what data we want, then we have to introduce it, then we have to gain trust from the people that are using it before we can ever use it to actually we have to gain that trust actually before we start making decisions with it. So whether it's how many packages we're moving to how many incidents we have, if we haven't built the trust in the data, then we can start being generic and building pivot tables. I know that sounds simple, but then if you're not even have good enough data to do that, then you shouldn't even be talking about AI, because then if you start talking about data lakes and data houses and all the technical back-end stuff, if you're reporting 10 incidents a year, why are you even talking about AI? So there's so much that needs to come in front of that. And then once you do have it, there needs to be a heavy amount of rules and regulations about how it's used.
Would anyone else like to add something, Patrick, perhaps, on the opportunities and threats that you see of
Yeah, I would just echo, James, I think, hit it very well. And again, I'm no AI expert, but definitely locking down and controlling it. And I think there's a desire to return shareholder value by indicating you have AI in place. And so companies may feel that false pressure, and maybe it's a real pressure, to deliver value through AI. And I would say, within an organization like Expeditors, we're very focused on the technology and using that technology to add value to our human interactions. We want our AI to drive our people doing work that humans need to do. And I think that's an important thing. The logistics world is a relationship world. And in fact, knowing our partners is a big piece of it, and knowing who we're doing security interactions. TAPA's big benefit is that interaction and networking, connecting to law enforcement. So those are things that are very critical that AI can't replace. And so again, having those roadblocks are good, right? We want some roadblocks in our approach to AI, because we'll have to figure out how do we navigate around some of those challenges to bring value within our organizations. So I know I get frustrated at times because I want to go really fast with AI, and my team within Expeditors, our global technology team, helps keep me in check. And so again, don't let the frustration stop you from using AI, but learn from those roadblocks. Make sure you understand why they're telling you those are roadblocks so that you can adapt and figure out how to bring value to your organization.